بسم الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. يوتيوب كيف الحال يا يوتيوب؟ Just let me know if you guys can hear me, please. If the volume is all good. If you can hear me, just put a yes in the chat so that I know you guys are hearing me loud and clear. Yeah, volume seems to be good. Jawad, what's going on, bro? Maya, how we doing? Right. I have been compiling this. Excellent, you can hear me great. I've been compiling this list for past couple months and it's not yet completed. I've got 23 points so far, but I'm not going to have time to go through all 30 regardless. Even if I had them, I only have time for 15 at the most today, okay, because I've got to wrap this up within an hour. And please forgive me if my energy is low. My coach pulled back my diet again this week, so low carbs, up to the cardio element of my program. So I'm just feeling a bit drained, to be honest. And yeah, bismillah. Bit of housekeeping, guys. Help me to hit 7,500 subs by the end of June. If you find value in this channel, if not, get the French toss off the channel. Stop watching me. What are you wasting your time for, bro? Big man thing. Amen. Right. Like the video as well. Barakallahu fikum. Abdul Malik wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Listening to a podcast throughout the day today, on and off, and it was the podcast that Jordan Peterson did with Dr. Will Farrell just a couple weeks ago, off the back of the Texas school shooting. And I had a feeling that it was yet again a kid, a young man from a fatherless household, from a single mother household. And I didn't know whether it was or wasn't because I wasn't following the story. But listening to the podcast, turns out once again, he was from a single mother household. And listen, this is not a bash to the single moms. Rather, it's a nod to the reality that a fatherless household is a rudderless household. Mothers are better geared towards providing the compassion element towards children, which is so crucial and essential, especially when a child is very, very young. But fathers are, for want of a better word, policemen. We're policemen is what we do. We're bouncers. Yeah. Full-time dad, part-time bouncer. And we're law enforcers. And the role of a father is to police his child before the police do themselves. Let me say that again. The role of a father is to police his child, especially his son, because sons have a greater proclivity towards violence and breaking the law and so on. So the role of a father is to police his son before the police do. You see, to fetter his son, clamp down on his bad behavior before the police do. And lo and behold, surprise, surprise, the Texas school shooter comes from yet again another single mother household. Now, to the young men who are watching this who also come from single mother households, I don't want you to watch this and feel some type of inferiority complex, to feel like you are deficient or that I'm taking shots at you. The truth of the matter is you are at a disadvantage. This is just a fact. It is what it is. But you can change that. Mr. Viral, Andrew Tate himself, is from a single mother household. He's from a single mother household. You know, his dad didn't come to the UK when he came over to Luton. His dad didn't come to Luton. Barely saw him, from what I understand, until his father, all the way up until he passed. So just because you're at a disadvantage doesn't mean you can't compensate or you can't catch up, I should say. But the more I hear of these very, very tragic, sad stories, the more I am grateful, wallahi, because in the moment I was not grateful. I was not grateful or gracious or would even acknowledge the role that my dad had in my upbringing when I was young, because my dad was harsh. And I will say maybe he was actually too harsh sometimes. But you know what? Like I said to my wife earlier today, better to be too harsh than to be too lenient. Better to be too harsh than to be too soft. So, with all that in mind, I've compiled a list that we're going to go through, inshallah. I hope to get through 15 today. Of 30 lessons I learned after I turned 30. And listen, there's something about turning 30 as a man. It's nothing to do with the number itself. It's just that phase of life. Late 20s, early 30s is when the light bulb switches on in the mind of a man. I don't know why. I first heard this from Kevin Samuels and it was utterly relatable because I had just had my light bulb moment myself a couple of years before. And that's not to say that I was like living in the dark or some type of, retard. But I definitely I was not as self-aware. Let's put it that way. I was not as self-aware then, all the way up until my late 20s. It was actually until I was 29 and a half, until I finally had this light bulb switch on in my mind. I was not as self-aware of myself, of my situation, my environment, my strengths, my weaknesses, so on and so forth, where I fitted on the chessboard as I am now. And no doubt this evolution will continue to evolve and to grow as I get older, because I'm still relatively young, 32. You don't really enter your wisdom years until 40 plus, until you're north of 40. With that in mind, however, I have a few lessons that I want to share with you young bucks to speed up your progress. Maybe you can have that light bulb moment sooner rather than later, And that leads me on to lesson number 1, which is not all advice is the right advice to give. Or I should say, not all good advice is the right advice to give. What do I mean by that? You have to be careful what type of advice you impart onto someone according to what stage or phase of the journey they are at in their life with respect to this specific thing. And this sounds very esoteric. I'm not getting into the details, so I'm going to give you a concrete example. I've been in sports ever since I was very young, and specifically into aesthetics, building an aesthetically pleasing physique since the age of around 14. Give you a bit of backstory. I was 14 years old. I went to a South Asian majority school, 97% Pakistani population in that school, Choni Boys High School, for those of you who know me. And although I am Muslim, for many years I was not accepted as a Muslim. I'll never forget when one Pakistani brother said to me, "How can you be Muslim? You're not Pakistani." This is the most baffling thing I've ever heard in my life. Because Islam did not originate in Pakistan. But those were the types of comments that I would receive because of the color of my skin. And I look a bit more Arab now, but I look like a white boy when I was younger, right? I look like a proper white boy. So this caused me a number of problems. I'd get into fights with the kids, and I had to move form at one point. And when I say I got into fights, what I mean to say is I got beat up a lot. Because when you would fight these guys, they wouldn't fight you one-on-one. They'd fight you in 2s, 3s, 4s, and 5s. That's just the way it goes. Because you would have 4 boys in the class, and they're all related to each other. One of them's the uncle, one of them's the cousin, and 2 of them are brothers. And they're all in the same form. It's crazy. So it was never a fair fight. And I only started getting into aesthetics and bodybuilding and things like this after I got beat up really bad once when I was in year 9 or year 10. I think it was year 10. And I can't remember what it was about now, what the fight was about. But I just remember stepping outside the school and a group of around 30, 40, maybe 50 boys surrounded me, encircled me, and just rushed me, just jumped me. I don't know how many of them rushed me. In the end, I was on the floor just covering up my face and everything. So after that humiliating experience, very humiliating experience, I literally went home that same day and I started training. The exact same day I got beat up, I went home and started training. Got involved into training, strength training, making my body look good. I was always involved in competitive sport, swimming, rugby, karate, etc. But actual strength training, that's where the journey started for me. And then I eventually fell in love with bodybuilding, as most young guys do in that age, for a good few years, for the best part of 6 or 7 years. And the way it goes with bodybuilding is you're trying to craft your physique, you're trying to improve this muscle group and that muscle group, and you're trying to gain muscle while staying lean at the same time, and so on and so forth. And all the while, I was buying magazines, Muscle Magazine, and all of these types of magazines of all of the ripped, shredded genetic freaks, and thinking to myself, yeah, I want to look like that. I'm gonna look like that. You can do it if you put your mind to it. You can become anything you want. BS, absolute nonsense. And it was only around 10 years actually into my fitness journey did I finally connect the dots and make the realization and acceptance actually that no, you can't become whatever you want to. I personally cannot attain the physiques of these genetic freaks. I don't possess the genetic makeup. I just don't have it. And there is a genetic element that cannot be ignored. Try as you might. If you want to become an elite bodybuilder, everybody knows on the Olympia stage, if you want to be on the Olympia stage, you need to have two things: full and round muscle bellies and small joints. I'll say that again. You need to have full and round muscle bellies. That is, there can be no gap. You know what? Let me even show you. I could show you. So you see, as I tense my bicep there, this is a gap here. This is a gap. Full muscle bellies or the Olympia stage athletes, this bicep will literally fill the entire arm. There'll be very small, tiny gap. Can I get these biceps bigger? Of course I can. But filling those empty spots, that's a genetic element. So full muscle bellies and round muscle bellies and small joints. Why small joints? Because they emphasize the contrast of a small joint on a big muscle. It makes you look even bigger than what you actually are. If you're very big boned, even if you've got a lot of muscle, you don't look as big as someone who's carrying the same amount of muscle but has tiny joints. The contrast is just amazing. It's very visually striking. You can't train for that. There is nothing you can do to make your joints smaller, or you can train to make your muscle bellies a little bit rounder, but there's only so far you can take it. But by the time I had made this realization that there is only so much you can do to enhance your genetic potential, your natural ceiling, I had already fallen in love with the sport. Or I should say, I had fallen in love with taking care of my body and being in good shape and health and so on. So although it was a bitter pill to swallow, it was okay because I had fallen in love with fitness and strength and health and all the rest of it regardless. So it wasn't that much of a big deal. However, and this brings me back to point number one, not all good advice is the right advice to give. If someone had told me 6 months into my bodybuilding journey that, Mahdi, I hate to break it to you, but you don't possess the genetic raw material to look like the guys in the magazines that you buy that you want to look like. I hate to break it to you, but you're never going to look like that. If they had told me that when I was only a few months into my journey, I may well have quit training forever and given up. Excuse me, and given up, because it would have been too difficult a pill for me to swallow, because I was only training because I wanted to look like them, not because I want to reach my own potential. That's nonsense. I want to look like them. It was too early on. The stickiness of the habit had not yet become super glue. It wasn't a super glue habit like it is now for me 10 years later. Well, it's 20 years later for me now, but when I made this realization, it was 10 years later. So going back to my original point, not all good advice is the right advice to give. You must consider what stage and phase in the journey is this individual at before you give that advice. It might be better for you to just shut your mouth, because it was better for me to continue training, to stay away from vices like smoking and whatever else, wasting time, shisha. Better for me to continue training, entertaining that hope, naively, albeit. Better for that than for someone to break that news to me and then for me to give up and then spend my time smoking, doing shisha, or whatever else. So, lesson number one, not all good advice is the right advice to give. Lesson number two, everything in life is on a timer. So plan to the end so that you can do all you want to in good time. I was sitting with a YouTuber a few months ago, and he mentioned to me the aspirations that he has in combat sports. And this gentleman, he's not much younger than me. And he said to me he wants to have a couple of fights before he gets too old. And I'd never once entertained the idea or the notion that I could be getting too old. It just didn't occur to me until he said it. And he was like, yeah, Mahdi, come on. Like, you have to fit the things you want to do in life at their correct times. This period of time of athletic ability, capability, peak athletic potential, this is just a short window. It's a small period, a brief period. That's not going to be here forever. And once it's gone forever. It's gone. That's it. So your physical potential, you peak in most sports at around 33, 34 years old. Some sports are a lot younger than that, like swimming and gymnastics, for example. Those sports, teens and 20s is when they peak. Early 20s, done, finished. But in most sports, it's around early to mid 30s. That's when they've peaked. Before 35, 33, 34, absolute peak. What comes after the peak? The decline. And when he said it, it made me realize I don't have time. Whatever boxes I want to tick off from a perspective of athletic accomplishment, I need to do it now, right now, because tick tock, tick tock, tick tock. There's no time. So, whatever you want to accomplish in life, you must ask yourself, what phase in life is this most appropriate for? If it's athletic accomplishments, you must complete that early on in life. If you want to become the president of a country, that's not going to happen when you're 30. I'm sorry. Hate to break it to you. You're not going to become a president of a country when you're 25 or a senior politician. That's for a later phase in life, and you still must plan accordingly. So you have to start laying the groundwork decades in advance in order to arrive at that goal, if that's what your goal is. Athletic ability or athletic potential, if you have any goals with regards to that, that's now whilst you're young. Everything in life is on a timer. So plot carefully. Visualize what it is you want to do or identify what it is you want to accomplish, and then do it. And set the timelines accordingly. Because you can't do it whenever you feel like it. Oh, I'm 60. I'm in the shape of my life. If you are 60 years old and in the shape of your life, it just means you were a bum when you are younger. That's all it means. It sounds great, right? It's a brilliant marketing tagline. 60 years old, I'm in the shape of my life. I've never been as fit and as healthy and as strong as I am right now at 60 than at any other time in my life, including when I was 25. Please, bruv. You were just lazy, bruv. That's all. You are fat, lazy. That's why you're in your peak when you're 60, because it wasn't hard to excel that. Yani. It didn't take much effort to get past that. So it's a psychological trick. It's a sleight of hand, a marketing manipulation, if you like. Everything in life is on a timer. Number 3, change is like an AMG turbo. The kick has a delay. Okay, what do I mean? Before I married my first wife, her dad, he had a number of high performance cars. And one of the cars that he had was a C43 AMG, Mercedes C43 AMG. Beautiful car at the time. We're talking nearly 20 years ago now. And I never forget that car. Amazing roar, as the AMGs do now. But the AMGs back then, I have to say, they sounded better. They had a more meaty roar to it. Whenever he would put his foot down, okay, and I believe this is the case for all of these high performance cars with turbos. I had a CLS 55 AMG as well. It was the same thing. Whenever he would put his foot down, whenever I would put my foot down on my AMG, there would be a slight lag, slight delay, ever so slight. Like we're talking like a fraction of a second. And you could hear, so you'd floor it, and then you'd hear the turbos go like that. So you'd hear them like, it's like they're winding up. I can't explain it. I'm sure someone who understands the technicalities of cars could explain it better than me. But it's like they're winding up. Then they start propelling forward, or it starts accelerating forward. Change in your life is like an AMG turbo. What do I mean? If you go on a diet today, let's say you're really overweight, okay? If you go on a diet today, you've got a coach, they've given you a diet specific to your needs, they've given you a training plan specific to your needs, and you're good to go. And on day one, you do everything the coach says to you. You follow every meal to the T, and you do every exercise in the book that you've been given. By day two, what change will you see in the mirror? What progress will you have made? None. None at all. Does that mean the program doesn't work? Does that mean the diet's no good? No. It means that change is like an AMG turbo. It takes time. There is a lag period before you will finally reap the benefits of this new change. And some change takes longer to reap than others. You may have heard the famous parable of the bamboo tree. They use this a lot. Success gurus use this a lot, or self-help gurus. The bamboo tree, the bamboo plant. Do you know how much it grows in its first year after being watered and after receiving sunlight? It grows 0 inches. Year two, after being watered and receiving sunlight, it grows 0 inches. Year three, 0 inches. Year four, 0 inches. After 4 consecutive years of being watered, being in the right environment, and receiving sunlight, the bamboo tree grows nothing. It doesn't grow. Now, try and compare this and relate this to yourself. Imagine putting in the work, doing the work for 4 years solid, and seeing nothing. But then what happens in the fifth year to the bamboo tree? Something very interesting happens in the fifth year to the bamboo tree. In the fifth year of being watered and receiving sunlight, the bamboo tree grows 90 feet in 6 weeks. After spending 4 whole years of being watered and receiving sunlight and not growing so much as a millimeter out of the ground, it all of a sudden sprouts up 90 feet in 6 weeks in its fifth year. Change is like an AMG turbo. Sometimes, all the time, in fact, there's a lag period. There's always a lag period. The question is, how long is the lag? If you're driving an AMG, it's going to be very short, fraction of a second. If it's something else that you're pursuing in life that you're trying to accomplish, that lag will be longer. Messi has a very famous quote. Lionel Messi, for those of you who follow football, soccer for my American brothers. He said, it took me 17 years and 200 and something days to become an overnight success. Very telling. Meaning he spent his entire life, from ever since he could remember, kicking a football around in a very organized way, obviously playing for clubs and so on and traveling and all the rest of it. Even moved country from Argentina to Barcelona so that they could pay for his human growth hormone treatment because he suffered from a mild form of dwarfism. So lots of sacrifices he made from a young age, had to move when he was young, like 11 or 12, to Barcelona. So it took him 17 years to become an overnight success. Just like the diet, just like the training regime, just like the AMG turbo, and just like the bamboo tree, there will be a lag period before you will reap what you have sown. And sometimes that lag period is longer than others. Sometimes it's really long. Sometimes it's long. It's not weeks or months, it's years, maybe even decades. Maybe. Usually doesn't take decades. But years is not it's not abnormal. It's not abnormal for it to take years. You just need to make sure that you're putting in the work every single day, that you're showing up every single day, that you are following the plan every single day. You've plotted out the GPS route, you've typed in the destination, you know where you want to go. Okay. How do you get to a destination with a GPS route? Google Maps. What do? It asks you for the destination. First, before you even move, before you set off, it asks you for the destination first. Why? Because then it reverse engineers backwards to calculate your route or the best route from that point where you want to go to where you are right now. So you plot, you plan, You identify where you want to go, and then you reverse engineer and you work your way backwards from there. Now you have a map. Now you have instructions. And according to what type of goal you have will dictate how long the journey is. How long the journey is. Do you have the patience to stick it out? Maybe it's an hour ride. Maybe it's a 12-hour ride. I don't know. Maybe it's going to take you a few weeks in the car, brother, and it's all long. And you have to be driving 12 hours a day. Maybe it will take you a few years. But persistency and consistency, when applied vigorously over and over and over, the world will yield to you eventually. That's why the most beloved deed to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the deed that is performed consistently. Look at the connection, look at the relationship. The most beloved deed that you can do is the one that is performed consistently. Any deed, any good deed from the Sunnah. That one that you do every single day until you die, that's the most beloved deed. That's the best deed. So be patient. Now, you need to know whether you're on the right track or not, because sometimes you get lost. You take a wrong turn and you think you're going the right way, but there's so much shrubbery and wood and trees around that you just can't tell where you're going. At that point, you need a navigator, a mentor of some sort, or some type of guidance, advice from someone you are willing to trade places with. Be careful whom you seek advice from. Only take advice from someone you are willing to trade places with. Remember that. Okay? I will not seek religious advice from one of my strongman coaches because he's not Muslim. But I will seek strongman advice from him. Equally, I will not seek strongman advice from one of my religious teachers, one of my shuyukh. Why? Because he's got plenty of religious knowledge, but the brother don't train. So I'm not going to ask him for strongman advice. Everyone has their speciality. And this is not an insult. It just is what it is. Only seek advice from someone you are willing to trade places with, meaning you respect the position that they have achieved in the area of the question that you are about to ask them. Okay? That's point number 3. Point number 4, let the first moment pass, wait for the second. That's not mine. I don't remember where I heard that. That's not my original quote. I'm sure it's a quote from somewhere, but I don't remember where I heard it from. Let the first moment pass, wait for the second. How many times have you got into an argument with someone and given them a knee-jerk response on WhatsApp or Snapchat or wherever you guys talk, and a couple hours later, or sometimes even a few minutes later, you absolutely regret it? Why? Because you were emotional in the moment. And that emotion, that anger that you experienced is intoxicating. It's an intoxicant. It's an intoxicant. It intoxicated you. Let the first moment pass, wait for the second. If by the following day you still feel that same anger and that you want to say something, then say something. But I guarantee you, you will most probably can't even be bothered, first of all. And second of all, even if you can be, because 99% of the time I found I can't even be bothered. It's just the moment has passed. I don't even care anymore. But on those occasions when you do feel you need to say something, you'll say it much better with no emotion, which is better for you, by the way. Because when you show emotion to the other person, you show them that they've gotten under your skin. That's another point I'm going to be coming to later on. Most of what people do is just to get a reaction out of you. That's the very next point. Let's go there straight away. Most of what people do is to get a reaction out of you, not because they actually want to talk about the problem. Most, and I've taken this from Robert Greene, I can't remember which of his books now, because I've read most of them, and I can't remember which one. It might have been 48 Laws, but it might not have been. It might have been Laws of Human Nature. People usually do something to annoy you, or pick a bone with you, or want to advise you, or want to discuss a problem with you. Oftentimes, it's not because they genuinely care or have your best interests at heart. It's because they want to provoke a reaction out of you. This is especially true with women. Especially true with women. So be careful, gentlemen, because oftentimes, a lot of the time, she might just want to have an argument with you just because she wants to get a reaction out of you. because a reaction shows that she has your attention. You see, the all important commodity in girl world, attention. If she can provoke a reaction out of you, she has your attention. Good, bad, doesn't matter. Of course, attention, that's the main thing. So remember that most of what people do is just to get a reaction out of you. And when you do react, you reward them. So deprive them by doing what? Do as Balthazar Gracian advised. There is no revenge, and I'm quoting him now. There is no revenge like oblivion, for it is the entombment of the unworthy in the dust of their own nothingness. The entombment of the unworthy in the dust of their own nothingness. There's no revenge like oblivion. There's no revenge like ignoring someone. Like they're so small that I can't even be bothered to block you. It's not, never mind, read your message. I'm not, first of all, this is how you must treat yourself. Gentlemen, I'm speaking to you specifically now. But ladies, you can also take benefit from this. When someone's trying to annoy you, I'm not even going to bless you by opening your message so that you can see 2 ticks, or you can see 2 blue ticks on WhatsApp, or you can see red on Instagram. I'm not going to bless you with that, because then you know that I saw it. I don't even want you to know that I looked at you. Never mind respond to you. And definitely I'm not going to block you, because if I block you, I communicate to you that you got under my skin, that you got to me. You got to me. I don't want you to have that satisfaction. No revenge. There is no revenge like oblivion. For it is the entombment of the unworthy in the dust of their own nothingness. Good. We're moving through this quickly. Number 6, just as well. Bismillah. Number 6. Iron never gets old. For my gym bros, I took this from the late Louis Simmons. Louis Simmons is the founder of Conjugate Training, Westside Barbell. He passed away recently. I just found out not too long ago, of old age, I believe. And something he said resonated deeply with me, especially as I'm, picking up a few more injuries myself now. Just the mileage, mileage catches up with you. Even if you service your car and you take it to the garage and you get the best oil and the best servicing and MOT and all the rest of it, it's getting old, bruv. It is what it is. It's going to start breaking down and problems and issues and so on. No matter how well you take care of that car, the human body is exactly the same. When you're young, the car is fresh. It's out the showroom, brand spanking new. You can floor it. You can do donuts with it. It doesn't matter. It's new. It's fine. As it gets older and you start racking up the mileage, never mind donuts, you can barely get out the drive. You can barely go to town and back without something breaking down in the car. Old age is the same. We're human bodies. We decompose. We get weaker. We die. We die. Iron never gets old. The iron that you are lifting in the gym never gets old. There's a gym that I train at right now, Fitness for You Gym. You see me tag it on Instagram sometimes. If you're not following me on Instagram, go ahead and do it right now. You can see right there. You can follow me there at the Mahdi Tijani. There are plates in that gym that you see me filming where I take my videos that have been there since I've been training there since 2005. The same plates. And do you know what change that has happened to those plates? Nothing. They look exactly the same. It's almost eerie. It's almost a bit weird because I've changed a lot in that time. The plates never change. Not even so much as a dent. They still weigh 20 kilos or 15 kilos or 10 kilos. Like the video if you're enjoying the video, guys. Subscribe to the channel. Jazakallah khair. Help me hit that 7.5K before the month is out. Subscribers. So the iron never gets old, but you do, which means you have to adjust and adapt as you get older, your training methods, your lifestyle habits, and so on. Because the wear and tear starts to catch up with you. The mileage on the car starts to catch up. You can't be doing donuts all the time anymore. You can't be flooring it cold as you just started the car up. No, it needs warming up a bit now. You need to go at 30 miles per hour for 15 minutes before you can do something like that. Treat your body the same way. As you get older, you start to wear and tear, you start to break down. It is what it is. Adjust, okay? Because your brain will always think that it's young. It will always think that you're 16, 17, 18, that you can do now what you did then. Not the case. Not the case. So be careful. Number 7, beware of being defined by your parents in reverse. I've mentioned this many, many times now, but it bears repeating. Very important lesson. Robert Greene talks about it in his book behind me there, Laws of Human Nature. Being defined by your parents in reverse, an example of that would be, my parents were extremely strict when I was younger, therefore I'm going to let my kids do whatever they want when they're older, right? Or in the Western world, in Europe in particular, women were genuinely oppressed for many years, for a long time. What's going on with this light? Women were genuinely oppressed for many years. They didn't have even so much. They didn't even have rights to inherit their own land. Their husbands would inherit it. Although there was a practical reason for that, and that practical reason was men were fully responsible for anything that would go wrong with that land. Therefore, if he's going to have all the responsibility, he should also have the authority. So that was the logic. The logic was, this woman can't be in charge of her land, but if she messes up, or she owes a debt or something like this, so she owns the land, but her husband's going to have to pay for her mess. No, it don't work like that. Because as soon as you married a man back then, your husband was completely responsible for you, for better or for worse. If you made a mess, he had to clean it up. So therefore, the husband would be entitled to all of her properties and so on. That was the way the logic went. This is not an Islamic thing, but I'm just explaining to you, this is how it was. Regardless, because of that experience, then now what do we have? We've gone the other way completely now, whereby we are giving women so many rights, quote unquote, to the genuine detriment of men. 90% of all custody battles are won by women in court, for example. If we were truly equal and 50-50, wouldn't this be 50-50? It's not. So we've gone the other extreme now. We're defining ourselves in reverse. They didn't like this negative experience, but then the opposite of extreme here is, guess what? Extreme. Let me say that again. The opposite of extreme is still extreme. So beware of being defined by your parents in reverse, because you may have been brought up a particular way. Maybe your parents said to you, education is so important, and they hammered it into you so much that you became sick of it. And now you've gone the other way and said, education is not important at all. Look at this guy, look at that guy, look at this third guy here. They got no education. Look how successful they are. That's also an extreme, by the way. That's an extreme. Education is important. It has its place. Don't get me wrong. Normal, like university level education, it has its function. It does. More than anything, not from an employment perspective, but from a perspective of, because degrees are worthless, but from a perspective of, you can work hard at a subject that's difficult consistently over a period of 3 years. Just that alone, that means something. That definitely gives you a bit of credibility. It shows that, okay, this guy or this girl's got a bit of perseverance in them. They're able to apply themselves consistently over a meaningful period of time and come out successfully out the other end as well. So beware of being defined by your parents in reverse, because the opposite of extreme is still extreme. I hope I've explained that well enough. Number 8, most great ideas will fail. Try anyway. Let me say that again. Most great ideas will fail. Try anyway. It's funny because Robert Greene again talks about this in his book, The Laws of Human Nature, that if you have a fantastic business idea or something like this, and it gets you so excited that to the point where you're like, you know what, this is just 100% winner. Usually those are the flops and the losers. I don't know what the correlation is, but I can tell you from firsthand experience, this is absolutely the case. Whenever I've had a light bulb moment and then gone ahead and executed, because I always execute regardless, I'd rather have deal with the pain of it failing as opposed to the pain of not knowing if it would have succeeded, just because I was too scared to try. And that's a whole other discussion. But those ideas where I had such an amazing idea, quote unquote, they've always failed. Whereas the ones where I was a bit more level-headed and they didn't really get my emotions going or anything like that, but I was like, yeah, there's something here. Usually those ones work out. And no, let me rephrase that. Most of the time they still don't work out, but some of them do. Going back to the original point, most great ideas will fail. Don't be disheartened. Try anyway. Better for you to have tried and for you to now know that, okay, that doesn't work, as opposed to you thinking, but what if? What if? It's very hard to live with what if, by the way. It's a killer. Most people can't live with it. What if I had done this? If only I had the courage. If only I ignored the naysayers and I tried anyway. You don't want to live with that. That's a nightmare. You can't deal with that. It's easy to live with the failures. Like, all right, fine, it didn't work out, whatever, it's fine. In comparison to living with the what if. That's a lifelong torture. Don't live with that. So humble yourself. Most great ideas will fail. Try anyway. Which brings me on to point number 9. That you are not as good as you think you are. But you're not as bad as you think you are either. Bismillah. When I was 25 and I first got into the business world, the entrepreneurial world, I didn't realize it at the time, but I stumbled across a lucky product, a very lucky product, a product that was both very much in demand and didn't need, it sold itself because it was such an excellent product. And that product very quickly started generating around £18,000 a month in profit within a matter of months, maybe 4 months. And I thought I was a flipping genius. 25 years old, maybe I just turned 26. No, I think I was 25. And £18,000 a month profit, that was net, that wasn't even gross. And I thought, oh, you know what? I just must be smart. I just must be smart. A couple years later, that business starts flailing. I start exploring different ideas left and right. With now, remember, I'm 2 years older. I'm more experienced. I have more business knowledge. I've read more books. I have more experience, and yet I couldn't figure out the problem. I couldn't revive or get that business running again. I couldn't revive it. Couldn't get it back on its feet. What does that tell you? And this quote, I've taken it from Patrick Bet-David. And I know you guys keep telling me Patrick Bet-David, he doesn't like Muslims, blah, blah, blah. Fine, bro. I don't follow him for religious reasons, bro. Yeah, I follow him because he's got some good stuff to say about business. That's about it. It's not that deep. All right. Just as I would hire a personal trainer to teach me how to train properly, whether he's Muslim or not is irrelevant. I take that knowledge wherever I can get it from. If he's talking about business, I'm going to listen to what he has to say about business because he's worth 9 figures. I'm going to listen to what he has to say. And he said, you're not as good as you think you are. Remember that. Meaning when the good times are going well, or when you're experiencing good times, affluent times, you're doing really well for yourself, just remember, you are not as good as you think you are. You are not aware, cognizant of the string of fortunate events that have come together, qadar Allah, that have come together to enable this success you are experiencing. You are not aware of it. How could you be? Because you just think it's you. You don't know, unless someone points it out to you. You see this a lot with some of these young kids who are blowing up on TikTok suddenly. Look at the Charli D'Amelio, or what's the other one? Bella Porch. They blew up massively a couple of years ago. Is it because they're so smart and intelligent? Bruv, they were dancing on TikTok, bruv. Now they're multi-millionaires. Multi-millionaires because they got such enormous followings. Don't know how many Charli D'Amelio's got now. Maybe 150 million on TikTok. Bella Porch, I know she's got over 90 million. Just from doing these funky moves and dancing. I guarantee you, they will. Well, you know what? I can't say I guarantee, actually. Let me take that back. But there is a strong possibility that they believe that they have had a large portion and are largely responsible for the success that they have achieved. And the truth of the matter is, there is so much luck involved in that, so much unforeseen circumstance that has enabled them to just, I don't know, hit the algorithm the way that they hit it and then explode. Absolutely explode. Do they produce content consistently every single day? No doubt. All right. Like everyone else does. And every content creator is producing content every single day. Why is it only those two who have blown up and a handful of others? There's other elements outside of your control that you are not aware of. So you're not as good as you think you are. But guess what? There is a counterbalance to this. And that is when you're experiencing tough times and you're going through a rough time of it, just remember, you're not as bad as you think you are either. because it's very easy to dig yourself into a hole, okay, and really beat yourself up when you're going through a tough time. It's very easy to beat yourself up and be like, man, I'm such an idiot, I'm such a donkey. When the truth of the matter is, you may well be more experienced, more knowledgeable, no more, are more just better, bigger, better, stronger in every manner conceivable. But for whatever reason, you haven't yet found the right vehicle to propel you. And this brings me on to a good parable that I can give to you. Warren Buffett, when he came out of school, he said, me and my friend, we both graduated from school in the 40s, I think it was, just after World War II, with very similar grades, very similar IQ level, very similar intelligence. I went on to become a multi-billionaire. He went on to become just a regular Joe Bloggs employee. Why? I said, what was the difference? We were both almost identical in terms of our intelligence, in terms of our academic achievement, in terms of everything. I said, what was the difference? Pay attention. He said the difference was the vehicle. The vehicle that we both chose to pursue our professional ambitions were very, very different. He chose a tricycle, and I chose a rocket ship. And this is so important for you to hone in on now. If me and Lewis Hamilton go head to head in a Formula One race, okay, we both got the same Formula One car. Who's going to win? Me, obviously. Lewis Hamilton will win. Okay? No, that doesn't require explaining. But if me and Lewis Hamilton go head to head and I'm driving a Formula One car and he's on a tricycle, now who wins? The answer is obvious yet again. He might be the more experienced driver. He might be a better rider, whatever term you want to use. But I've got a Formula One car. There's no competition here. The engine's too powerful. I'm just going to wipe the floor with you. The vehicle. When social media first started taking off, some of the most intelligent marketers were in the newspaper business. And yet, despite this intelligence and experience that they had, no amount of experimentation and trying and, persisting, never quitting. There is a time to quit, by the way. I'll get to that later. No amount of that was helping them increase their bottom line. In fact, their bottom line kept on shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. Why? Because the audience had moved to social media. It was no longer about newspapers. It was about Facebook. It was no longer about magazines. It was about Instagram. It was no longer about fill in the blank. It was about Snapchat. Once those same individuals finally, realized that and made the switch to providing their marketing prowess and applying it on social media, then their bottom lines went up again. The vehicle of newspaper and magazine was dying. It was a tricycle. Whereas Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram, that was the new rocket ship. So you must do your best to, number one, find yourself a rocket ship. It doesn't even have to be a rocket ship. If it's an AMG, that's bro, you're going to make a lot of money. AMG is more than good enough. Rocket ship, that's amazing. Rocket ship is a rocket ship. Doesn't have to be, though. Even if it's just a good, decent car, like a nice, fast car, is better than a tricycle. So it doesn't matter how intelligent you are, you still need to find yourself the right vehicle. And that's why to go back to the original point, you're not as good as you think you are, but you're not as bad as you think you are either. If you are having a tough time with it right now in your profession, maybe you're in the wrong vehicle. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe there are other options that you have yet to exhaust, but there's a possibility you're in the wrong vehicle, that you haven't got yourself a decent vehicle. You're riding a tricycle. Maybe you're even crawling at this point, because it's a dying industry, a shrinking industry. So just remember, when the good times are going really good, you're not as good as you think you are. And when you're having a tough time of it and it's going bad, you're not as bad as you think you are either. And you know what? That's point number 9. Okay, let me finish off with one more. Go to point number 10. Point number 10. This is the last one I'll do for now. You usually know what to do, so pay attention to that faint voice in your head. Now, I'm not saying to you that you should never seek advice. from those who have more knowledge than you. But more often than not, and this is definitely my experience in dealing with people when they come to ask me questions, relationship oriented questions, that they usually know what to do. I'm like, bro, sister, why are you asking me this question in the first place? Bro, why are you asking me this question in the first place? The reason why you're asking me is because there's something bothering you here. You've got an inkling about something. Now, unless you suffer from, mega suspicion, like you're hyper paranoid, then maybe you shouldn't take this advice. But generally speaking, for the general population who don't suffer from this, if it feels like something's off, it's probably because something's off. Investigate in the least instance. You usually know what to do. You just don't have the courage to go through on it. Or you don't want to because you're too invested, emotionally invested in whatever it is that you're involved in. Like the video on your way out. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.